learn what is all about the elasticities of demand, what is all about the demand forecasting and its methods, and production analysis. So let's begin with the elasticities of demand. So let's talk about the measurements of elasticity, which I've already done, I believe. Yeah. Let's begin from the types of elasticity. So there are mainly four types of elasticity of demand. The first one is price elasticity of demand. Second one is income elasticity of demand. And the third one is cross elasticity of demand. And fourth one is advertising elasticity of demand. So let's begin to define all these terms with mathematical formulas here. So let's talk about the price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand refers to a ratio of a proportionate change in quantity demanded due to a proportionate change in its price. So if there is a change in any of the price of XYZ product, then automatically it will also change in its quantity demanded for product X, Y, or Z. And if it happens, it's called price elasticity of demand. In other words, we could define price elasticity of demand. It refers to the quantity demanded of a commodity in response to a change in prices. Price elasticity of demand, it could be a positive as well as the negative. So we cannot, or the researcher cannot assume, oh, the price elasticity would be positive. No, it should always be a negative, it always be a positive, depending upon the type of product, depending upon the situation, and depending upon the follow-up factors which influences the demand. The relationship between price and demand is inverse in case of price elasticity of demand, and it is mathematically measured the proportionate change in the quantity demanded for product X. Based on an assumption, let's say product X, and proportionate change in the price of X. In other words, the price elasticity of demand could be expressed the difference between the quantity demanded of next unit and quantity demanded of the last unit by the quantity demanded by price difference between the price of a next unit and the price of the last unit by price of last unit. So this is also another formula to measure the price elasticity of demand, and accordingly we calculate the price elasticity of demand using these two formulas. So let's begin with income elasticity of demand. If there is a change in the quantity demanded just due to a change in its income. So if there is a change in income, it automatically influences the quantity demanded of a commodity, let's say X, Y, or Z. So in other words, or in simple sense, income elasticity of demand refers to a quantity demanded of a commodity due to a change in an income of a consumer. So income elasticity is normally positive, which indicates a positive relationship between the quantity demanded of a commodity and its income. So if, for example, if a consumer wants to buy tea more and more just because of its increase in income, yeah, or in other words, if the consumer buy a car just because of their increase in income, and that's called income elasticity of demand. When it comes to the mathematical formula, there are two main formulas to measure the income elasticity of demand. That is the proportionate change in quantity demanded for product X by proportionate change in its income. So if there is a change in demand, it's just according to the change in income only. And that's called income elasticity of demand. In other way, It could be measured, that is the difference between the quantity demanded of the next unit and the last unit by quantity demand of the last unit by difference of income by income of the last unit. And that's called the income elasticity of demand. So let's begin the cross elasticity of demand. It's mainly related to the substitute and the complementary goods. In the earlier session, I already told that substitute refers a positive relationship between the two goods, and the complementary goods are, you can see, a negative relationship between the two goods. So it is measured as, if we talk about how to define the cross elasticity of demand, you could define very easily from using the mathematical formula. So the cross elasticity of demand refers to a ratio of a proportionate change in quantity demanded for product X by proportionate change in price of product Y. So if there is a change in any of the demand of any product, let's say X is just due to a change in the price of another product, say Y. And that's called the cross elasticity of demand. In other words, it can be measured a difference of the quantities by quantity of a last unit by difference of prices by price of the last unit of Y. So this is the another formula to calculate the cross elasticity of demand, and the exact result to be you can see come using this formula is will be positive or negative. It depends upon the type of good, whether it would be the substitute good or whether it would be the complementary. Let's talk about the next category, that is advertising elasticity. So it depends that advertising elasticity, if there is any change in the quantity demanded of product just due to a change in its advertising costs, and that's called advertising elasticity. So if there is any increase in the sales revenue just because a researcher or particular, you can see, the organization has changed or increase or decrease the advertising expenditure. So there is a positive relationship, there is a negative relationship between the whatever the amount spent on the advertisements and its impact on the sales revenue. And that's called advertising elasticity. It is always be a positive, whatever the value calculated using these two formulas or whatever the result would come using these two formulas will always be positive in case of advertising elasticity. So when we talk about the mathematical formula, it is being shown on the screen, that is the proportionate change in quantity demanded for product X by proportionate change in advertisements cost. And in other words, it could be calculated a difference between the quantities of the you can see the next from advertising elasticity of demand. It refers to an increase in sales revenue just because of a change in advertising expenditure. In this particular type, there is a positive relationship between whatever the amount spent on advertising and its impact on the sales revenue. Using this measurement mathematical formula and the measurements that has been shown in this particular scenario, the advertising elasticity is always be positive. Using this mathematical formula, the advertising elasticity of demand will be measured as a proportionate change in quantity demanded for product X by a proportionate change in advertising cost. In other words, I could say if there is a change in the quantity demanded of any of the product, let's say X, Y, or Z, it's just due to a change in advertisement cost, whether it would be goes flow, it increase or decrease. In other words, there is another formula to calculate the advertising elasticity, that is the difference between the quantities of the last unit and the next unit by quantity of the last unit by a difference between the advertising cost of next unit and the last unit by the advertising cost by next last unit rather than next unit, and that's called the advertising elasticity of demand, as it depends upon the quantity demanded due to a change in advertisements cost. So let's focus on the next topic, that is the what are the factors that influence the elasticity of demand. These are the following factors that affect the elasticity of demand. The first one is nature of product. It's very true that elasticity of demand could be the unity, could be inelastic, could be elastic depending upon the nature of product. It would be durable, it would be perishable, it would be substitute, it would be the complementary good. So accordingly, when we talk about the substitute good, there is a negative relationship between the two similar products. It means the elasticity of demand would be negative. So depends upon the nature of product, depends upon the type of the product, and accordingly the elasticity of demand will be measured. The next is time frame. It could be long run, it could be short run. So depends upon the more the time would take, the elasticity of demand would be inelastic. So the less would be the time, the elasticity of demand would be inelastic relatively. So that's called depends upon the time frame, depends upon the period of time. Accordingly, the elasticity of demand will be measured. The next one is degree of postponement. When we talk about the degree of postponement, it depends upon the elasticity of demand. The more the postponement of any of the production process, or the production, you can say time, the elasticity of demand could be negative. So it depends upon the more time of the postponement will be took, then definitely the elasticity of demand would be negative. The next one is number of alternative uses. That of course the every human being has unlimited wants, and if the resources are limited, which have a number of alternative uses, then definitely the elasticity of demand would become negative. Next one is taste and preference of the consumers, as it is one of the main factor which influence the demand, and accordingly it also influence the elasticity of demand. So definitely it is unpredictable, and it keeps changing the within a second, within a minute. So accordingly the elasticity of demand would be the less elastic, and it could be the more elastic, depends upon the taste and preference of the follow-up consumers. The next one is availability of the close substitutes. The more close substitute, it would be the more elastic, and the less substitute, it would be the less elastic of demand. Next is in case of complementary or joint good. So when we talk about the complementary or joint good, it would be a positive relationship. That means it's relatively elastic. So it depends upon the type of goods that the consumer is consuming, and accordingly the elasticity of demand could be calculated. The next one is level of prices. Definitely the elasticity of demand, it always depends upon the level of prices, and how the prices could increase or decrease, and resting the other factors would become constant. The elasticity of demand would be positive. When we talk about the availability of subsidies, so when we talk about subsidies, it always depends that the elasticity of demand could be relatively elastic. Then we talk about the expectation of prices. It is unpredictable, because as the researcher or the particular organizer or the analyzer will always expect the follow-up increase or decrease prices in the future, and it is very unpredictable whether it could benefit in the future or not. So definitely the elasticity in that particular scenario, the elasticity of demand would be inelastic. Durability of the product, whether it would be the perishable, whether it would be used for more than a week or twice a week. So it depends upon, so definitely the elasticity of demand would become negative or positive depending upon the durability, whether the product has been used twice where in a day, whether the product has the expiry date within a days or within a week. So it depends upon the durability, and accordingly, the elasticity of demand would become elastic or inelastic. Government policies, it's always been elastic as it is fixed for a year, and it keep changing according to the rules and regulation prescribed by its government or a state government or a central government. In that particular scenario, the elasticity of demand is positive. So this are the factors, all of the factors which are very important, which also influence the elasticity of demand and which always denotes the shape of the elasticity of demand, whether it would be inelastic, whether it would be elastic, whether it would be relatively elastic, positive or negative, or whether it would be, you can say, relatively inelastic. So it depends the number of factors, and accordingly we can denote the shape and the result of the elasticity of demand. Next concept, which is a very important concept, that is the demand forecasting. It is, as if we can also say, there is another concept which is called a sales forecasting, but in this particular demand analysis, we are talking about demand forecasting. Let's talk about demand. As already told, that every human being has unlimited wants. So if the consumer has desire, has a natural desire and a willingness to pay or buy, and ability to a specified price to consume that product, to buy that product, and that's called demand. So it is very necessary. First, a researcher has to measure the demand accurately in terms of the quantity as well as its value for various purposes. Demand forecasting is very helpful for any firm or any organization for a decision making, for an optimal decision making, and of course also at the national level. These are what is forecasting demand. It is a process where a researcher forecast predict the demand in the future, that whether the particular products that we launch, the expected demand would be, you can say, thousand or lakhs in a particular company. So that's called the forecasting demand or demand forecasting. It is one of the most challenging tasks for every organization, for every, you can see, manager. So it may be easy in case of very few products and services. So for example, Maggie, for example, we can say milk. So these are the products, it's very easy to forecast a demand as it is a daily needs products where the consumer consumed very easily on a daily basis. And accordingly, the organization and the company can forecast its demand of the milk or the bread butter. So it is very easy process for a few products or services where the demand does not change, and easily a researcher or a particular analyzer can predict the prices, you can or of a new product or a few products which has been launched or which has been running for a long period of time. So when we talk about what the demand for a product, it will not change from time to time or competition, which is not really significant, but it is relatively easy to forecast demand for a particular, for a one product or for a two products or any of the services which has been running for a, you can say, couple of years. So when we measure or when we forecast the demand of a few products or for a one or two products, there are various methods of forecasting the demands. So before forecasting a demand, it is very important to achieve or to gather a base of information, and accordingly, the researcher could analyze or for analyze its methods to forecast the demand of a particular or selected product. So it is very important to understand and consider what the customers say, what the customer could do, how the customer behave in a given marketing situation. So these are the questions where the researcher need an answer, and accordingly the company will analyze or gather the information base, and accordingly use the one of the best method to forecast the demand for its products. When we talk about the various methods of forecasting demand, it's being categorized into two methods. The first one is survey method, and the second one is statistical methods. So when we talk about survey method, we always have a plenty of the surveys which has been organized, which has been conducted in India, and there are plenty of the statistical methods when we talk about the parametrics and the non-parametric tests. So accordingly, we use to analyze or forecast the demand. So these are the methods when we talk about the survey method, when we talk about the statistical method, when we talk about the other methods as well. So the first one is survey method. They are the survey of the buyer intention. They are categorized into two methods. So when we talk about the large population, which is in lakhs and crores, we talk about the census method. So when you selected 100 sample, a very small sample, 1,000 samples, or collecting a data from the 1,000 respondents or the 100 respondents, a small group of a sample, we talk about the sample method. So when we talk about the Salesforce opinion method, so there are plenty of sales representative there where their opinion are equally matters when in case of the survey, and that method is called the Salesforce opinion method. What is your opinion? Let's take an example. What is your opinion to decide a price of a new product for the future? So that's called, and when they then they give their opinion, when they share their opinion in case of the marketing scenario, in case of the sales scenario, the Salesforce opinion method will be used to take a opinion about demand forecasting for its new product, which will be launched soon by the company. So that's called the two methods, that is survey of the buyer intention, what the consumer's intentions could be. So two methods are there. The one first in census and the sample method, and the second one is the Salesforce opinion method. The next one is statistical method. We under this there are four main categories. The first one is trend projection method. Here we talk about the trend line by observer. So whatever the observe on the seasonal basis, whether it would be the quarterly, whether it would be yearly, whether it would be half yearly, whether it would be seasons, winter, summer, spring season, rainy season, and accordingly the sales line, accordingly the demand line would be drawn. It would be upward, it would be downward, it would be shifts of the demand, whether the demand would get increased or decreased. It depends upon the forecasting you can see about these using these methods. The second one is least square method. It is an equational method where the two variables would be considered, and accordingly, using the mathematical formula, we use to forecast the demand for the products. The next one is time series analysis, where the particular demand will be analyzed, will be forecasting according to the period of time. Let's say the quarterly, half yearly, even weekly, you can say monthly, and you can say yearly, half yearly, 4 yearly, you can say 6 yearly. So accordingly, the demand will be forecasting, and there are various methods under time series. We can see a 4 moving average method, a 3 moving average method. Now you can see a 5 moving average methods, and accordingly, the demand will be forecasting using this analysis technique. The next one is moving average methods. As I told, it is very similar to the time series analysis because it also denotes the time period, and it will be calculated on the basis of the yearly basis only, whether it would be 2 yearly basis, 3 yearly moving average basis. Here we are taking, a researcher will take the average of the 3 months and calculate the value. If we talk about the 4 average moving average method, so here it considered the 4 months. The first 4 months, the average will be calculated. The second 4 months, the average will be calculated. So whatever the sales value or whatever the, you can see, its revenue has been calculated though, and accordingly the 2 or 3 moving average will be calculated. So it is, average means mean. So in statistics, mean what's called for, whatever the expenditure has been mentioned or the sales has been mentioned, quantity demand of a product X or Y will be mentioned, just add it all and just calculate the mean. So that's is very similar to the moving average method as well. So if the 4 months sales has been given, so you need to calculate the 2 moving average method. So accordingly, the 4 months has been given, just divide into 2 each, and accordingly the average will be calculated. How? The first 2 months sales divide by 2, as we have to calculate the 2 moving average, so divide by 2. If we have to calculate the 3 moving average, divide by 3. So just add the values, divide by the 2, 3, or 4, whatever the moving averages has been calculated accordingly. The next one is exponential smoothing. When we talk about exponential smoothing, it is one of the, you can see, a process where a researcher predict or based on assuming their past data. So whatever the past data has been mentioned related to the demand of a particular or selected products, the researcher will assume using the following mathematical models and accordingly forecast the demand. The next one is barometric techniques. Barometric techniques will be used in statistics where all that, you can see, the opinions of the consumers will be recorded, and accordingly it will be analyzed and used for forecasting the demand. The next one is simultaneously equations method. So when we talk about the trend equation method, when we talk about the least square equations method, these two methods will be used where the two particular variables will be used. Let's say a and b x. We can take an equation: y is equal to a plus b x, x is equal to a plus b y. So these are the simultaneously equations methods where the values of a, the intercept values of a and b will be calculated using the mathematical data, and accordingly the results will be used to forecast the demand of a particular product. The next one is correlation and regression methods. Correlation is very simple, that it's a process, or it's a, you can say, of showing up a relationship between one or two variables. When we talk about regression method, is also tell us or deals with the difference between one or two variables using the various mathematical calculations, and that's called the correlation and regression method. So it is one of the, you can say, statistical method which is used to forecast the demand of a particular product. There are other methods as well, that is the expert opinion method, test marketing, control experiments, and judgmental approach. When we talk about the expert opinion method, So definitely to forecast the demand of a particular product, expert opinions will be invited to give this to share their opinion to forecast the demand of a particular product, say X and Y. The next one is test marketing. It is very important that before you build up any information base, it is very important to test the marketing scenario or the situation, to ask the questions or the to prepare a questionnaires for the consumers or for the customers, and accordingly test the marketing situation, whether it would be the controlled or uncontrolled for its products. Next one is controlled experiments. So it is very important. Controlled experiments refers to testify the product in a very small sample of very small sample of persons, very small sample of the respondents or the participants, and that's called the controlled experiment. So accordingly, if the experiment would work, then it could be you can see process into the next steps to launch to the market in a very controlled situation, and that's called the controlled experiment. Next one is judgmental approach. So it depends on judge that if a particular product has been testified, so accordingly a particular expert will judge the that particular product and accordingly share their your views or opinion, and accordingly that opinion or views and that judgment, the final judgment will be used to forecast the demand of a particular product. So these are the various methods, the main three methods: survey, statistical, and other methods, where every methods are classified into different sub methods, and accordingly will be used depending upon analyzing the market situation. And once analyzing the market situation, then accordingly the researcher will use any one of the method or any two of the methods and then testify the. Let's talk about the next concept, that is the production functions. So production function basically a technical relationship, or you can say a formal relationship, which shows the max, which shows to achieve the maximum amount of output, so that it will be produced by a various, you can say, set of inputs. So production function is, in a general sense, production function shows a positive relationship between the outputs and the inputs. So if the more and more the inputs will be utilized just because to reach out the maximum amount of output. So this is a way that how to define the production function. In terms, in according to the Samuelson, he defines the production function as a technical relationship which reveals or which shows the maximum amount of output which is capable of being produced by each and every set of input. It means whatever the set of inputs it's there, if it reach to a maximum amount of output, or it reach to achieve the maximum amount of output, that's called the production function. And of course it also defined just to get a technical knowledge. As why I'm saying technical knowledge, because production is categorized into five elements, and that is land, labor, capital, technology, enterprise, or organization. And that's the main reason it's called a technical knowledge, because every factors of production has to be dealt technically rather than more theoretically. So it's called practical knowledge. So when we talk about another author, it's Michael R. Bain. It defines the production function as that functions which defines or to get or to achieve the maximum amount of output that can be produced with a given set of inputs, and that's called the production function. Let's talk about, as I already defined, the production function, which shows a formal relationship between inputs and output. If there are plenty of inputs, then accordingly the optimal output can be achieved, and that's called the production function. So when we talk about the inputs of any product and service, that is the five factors of production, that is called the land, labor, capital, organization, and technology. So when we talk about mathematically how you expressed the production function, that is the production function, which stands with Q, that is called a quantity of the production, is a function of five factors of production, that is land, labor, capital. O stands for organization, T stands for technology. So production function, that means the quantity of production is a function of the five elements of production, and that's called the production function. So if we talk about these inputs, that is land, labor, capital, organization, and technology, has to be considered very carefully, as in reality, materials can also be included as a set of inputs as well. So these are the main five factors, but it doesn't mean that all other factors, or you can say, of production to be into an inputs to be utilized, you can say, to get the maximum output. So this is called an input and output relation, or in other words, production function mathematically. Next is the law of production function, or in other words, we can say the law of diminishing returns. So this is called a product cycle of the production function. So when we talk about the law of returns, it is also, as it is also denotes to another name, that is law of returns, law of diminishing returns, law of variable proportion. So there is a rule. When we talk about law, there is a rule, and that rule will be followed accordingly. And that rule will be mentioned as well. So when at least one factor of production, it could be land, it could be labor, it could be organization, it could be technology also, it's fixed. When one factor of production is fixed and any factor input is fixed, and when all other variables are carried on or changes, in that scenario, this is a rule. When at least one factor, it could be land, labor, is fixed, other, you can say, other factors are changing or changes or varied, in that particular law, the total output initially increases at an increasing rate. So after reaching a certain point or level of output, the total output will increase at a declining rate. So whatever the words has been expressed here, it is always shown through diagram. So this is the diagram. This is called a law of variable proportion using a following diagram. So they are categorized into three stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. There is a rule that at least one factor of production will be fixed, and the other factors of production will become changed or will become changing according to the situation. So in that particular law, how to show the stages of the productions, whether it would be increase, it would be decrease, or it could be, you can say, constant. So this is a rule. This is a rule. Based on that, we show up the law of variable proportion in case of total product, that is the total production, that is average product, that is the average product. It means average product refers to a total product by their number of inputs. Marginal product refers as, you can see, subtraction of total product of mixed units to total product of the last units. That means a difference, a subtraction difference between the total product of next unit and last unit. And that's called marginal product. So these are the three categories of the product: total product, average product, and marginal product. So let's focus on total product. Total product is shows a total production of all the output using a given set of or all set of inputs. So when we talk about the law of variable proportion, here the you can see the product, the level of output is increasing at an increasing rate. Then after a certain point of level of output, the you can see the curve, you can see the total product, that means the level of output will become constant, which is shown at point B. Then after reaching and having a certain level of output, the basically the total product or output will start declining, and that's called the law of variable proportion, that the level of output increases as an increasing rate. After a certain point of level, a certain point of time, the level of output will become constant, and after a certain point in the changes, the level of output will start declining at a decreasing rate. So, and that's called the stages. So when the increases at an increasing rate, this is stage one. When we talk about constant, we talk about stage two. When we talk about declining stage, that is decreasing, the level of output is declining at a decreasing rate, we talk about stage 3. So when we talk about stage 3, here we reaches or where the average product will also decline, where the marginal product will become negative. When we talk about the point B, where it reaches to a peak point, or it reach to a certain level of output or certain point of the level of output, where the average product and the marginal product will intersect each other. If you can see on the screen the diagram, it already shown. Then when we talk about the certain peak point or certain level of output reach to be a point where the marginal product and average product will become equal or cut at one point. So when we talk about stage 1, the marginal product will also increases at an increasing rate. Average product will also increases at an increasing rate. So when we talk about stage 2, average product will also increase but at a diminishing rate, at a decreasing rate. But and marginal product in stage 2 will always declining at a declining rate or decreasing rate. So when we talk about stage 3, total product will decreasing as a decreasing rate, average product will also at a declining rate, and marginal product will all becomes negative. And that's called the 3 stages of the law of variable proportion, which states that the level of output increases at an increasing rate, stage 1. After reaches a certain point, the level of output will become constant, which is shown in point B. Then reaches to a certain level of output, then at the last, the level of output decreases at a decreasing rate, and that is point C, and that's called the law of variable proportion. So this is a diagrammatic representation. But when we talk about the tabulated representation, this is a way to show up. and how to calculate the total product, marginal product, and average product. It is very easy to understand, and how you using this tabulated representation, and accordingly you can show up the stages of the law of variable proportion. So the unit of labors is given in the question, that is 0 to 8, 8 units of labor. Total product is always being given, because based on the total product, the marginal product and average product will be calculated. So total product is 0, 10, 22, and so on. So when we talk about how to calculate the marginal product, I already told it's a difference between the total product of a next unit and the total product of the last unit. So what when we that's called the marginal product. So when we talk about the total product, what is the total product of the first next unit, that is 10, and what is the total product of the last unit, that is 0. So this is a way, and what is the difference, that is 10. So this is a way to calculate the marginal product. So it's begin from 0, as the 0 has been mentioned. That means 10 minus 0. The next unit, the one unit of labor, the marginal product would become 10. When we talk about 22 minus 10, 12, 33 minus 22, 11, 40 minus 33, 7, 45 minus 40, 5, 48 minus 45, 3, then 48 minus 48, 0, 45 minus 48 minus 3. If we look upon the shape of the the marginal product initially increases at an increasing rate, then it becomes constant at 11, then immediately it starts declining and reaches a point to 0, and then becomes negative. So if you look up the shape of the MP curve, it increases at an increasing rate, then it constant at some point, then immediately it declining at a decreasing rate, then it reached to 0, and after 0 above the origin, you can see the MP is negative, and the same shape of the diagram has been shown in the particular calculated or mathematical calculations. How to calculate the average product? It's very simple. The total product by number of units of labor. I repeat, how to calculate the average product? It's equal. Average product is equal to total product by units of labor. So 0 divided by 0, AP is 0. 10 by 1, 10. 22 by 2, 11. 33 by 3, 11. 40 by 4, 10. 45 by 5, 9. 48 by 6, 8. 48 by 7, 6.85. 45 by 8, it's become 5.62. Now, what is law of variable proportion is to show up the stages. That is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. What the law of variable state, that level of output increases at an increasing rate, and that's called stage 1. So if you look up on the tabulation on the table, stage 1 is increasing till 11. When we talk about stage 2, the constant, it reaches to a peak period, that is 11. Then after stage 2, it becomes stage 3. Why? Because every curve is declining, whether it would be total product, whether it would be the marginal product, whether it would be average product. So when we talk about stage 3, it's declining. So if you talk about declining state, that is stage 3, 10, 9, 8, 6.85, 5.62. Then 5, 3, 0, then 45, 48, 48, which is mentioned. And again, it reaches to decline stage 45. So the stage 3 is 45. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 is called the stages of the law of variable proportion through diagrammatic representation, through tabular representation. The next one is the production function with two variable inputs in law of return. So when we talk about the production process, which always requires the two main inputs, that is capital and labor. These are the two main inputs which will be more used to produce a given output. So there is, if any more than two units will be used in a real life situation, so we automatically restrict the number of inputs to two only. So it is very essential that two inputs well enough to reach or to produce a given output. I didn't say that it would increase or decrease. I said the two inputs, that is capital and labor, are well enough to produce a given output. So that is the function, that is the production is equal to the function of capital and labor, and accordingly both are required to produce a main product, and both are very substituted to each other, and accordingly whatever the combination of these two inputs, that is labor and capital, then definitely it gives us the required number of units of output which is needed in the particular situation and scenario. That's it for today. We will proceed some more new important concepts, that is isoquotes, in the next session. Till this time, thank you to all and namaste to all.